Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about when the relationship fades.
Oh, it's hard.
Yeah. You know, relationships really do need to be nurtured and taken care of. And when we don't, it gets weaker and weaker, and the connection just kind of slowly fades away.
A relationship can be like a living thing or like a muscle. It is something that needs continuous care.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about this today because many of you are probably feeling pretty bad about how you treated your ex in the relationship, probably feeling pretty neglectful, or maybe you realized you were pressuring them, or your anxiety had you become very controlling or manipulative.
Yeah, and I see a lot of complacency when a relationship slowly fades out. And I know many of you, this isn't your intention. I could see relationships fading out as early as even 6 months into a relationship sometimes. Once that real life kicks in, both of you have to go to work, you have to tend to your responsibilities, and so it can be difficult to try to keep that connection alive. So in this video, we're going to talk about some of the things that cause a relationship to fade, and then also what to do when you find yourself in a situation where your relationship is slowly evaporating from you.
Yep. You gotta work on your attachment issues, because if you don't, you're going to do things that every time you have these interactions with somebody, it's making this connection either stronger or weaker. And when we have issues, when we're neglectful or we're pushy and controlling and we're judgmental and we're trying to take away the other person's otherness because we want them to be like us, it makes them want to exit the situation a little bit at a time. But if you have these interactions all day, every day, it slowly gets worse and worse.
Yeah, and so it can be difficult to find that balance between the closeness and the separateness. So one of the reasons as to why a relationship fades out is a lack of dates. And this is something that I'm hearing more and more. In fact, when I was in college for counseling, a lot of the professors would share that they would have a specific date night with their spouse just for the point of connecting. And just so that they don't forget to continuously date your partner, date your spouse, if they turn into a spouse, if they are a spouse at that point. And so when we do get involved in our lives, we can kind of forget to have special intentional time with our partner, and we might start to turn our chores into partner time. We might start to turn our friend time into partner time, and it's just not quite the same as when you're having that one-on-one interaction. Things also becoming quite mundane. You kind of go through the motions of a relationship and you're not really present with your partner. You're not really sharing what's actually going on in your life. You're just kind of keeping things surface level.
And people just kind of expect that it's always going to stay like that.
Yeah.
It's not. You have to court your partner. You have to take them on dates. You have to make a conscious effort to do fun things, to connect, to keep that connection strong. If you don't, you're going to wind up getting dumped. And then somebody new comes along, starts making your partner feel good, excited, alive again, and we get angry when they leave. Now, sometimes we were great partners and they left, but many times there were things we could have done differently or better, been more proactive in keeping the relationship healthy.
Exactly. And this can be something that's more difficult for the avoidant attachment style. In the beginning, they can come on strong.
Yes.
They can be super involved, super vulnerable sometimes. You would be surprised. You'd think, man, I had no idea this person was avoidant at all because they were so, hard on their sleeve from the beginning.
Yep.
But then there's a point where their attachment kicks in, and then now everything is superficial. How was your day? Good.
And now they've disappeared for days at a time.
Yeah, and so this can be really challenging for the avoidant attachment style, but also for the anxious attachment style to recognize this pattern. And it can be difficult for the anxious attachment style to recognize these patterns and to stop from panicking, because when we see that, we panic. So
Absolutely.
Really tough.
And then the panicking leads to a cycle of arguing and fighting, and that just makes things worse. And one person doesn't want to be around the other, then they both don't want to be around each other, and it just gets worse. Now, another major issue as to why relationships fade is mental health. Okay? The healthier somebody is, the more they've worked through their attachment issues, the better they are with their resiliency, and ultimately the happier they are as a person, the more likely they're going to be able to give you what you need, communicate what they need. But when people struggle with the depression, particularly anxiety, trauma, any other mental health issues related to it, it really makes a major difference in them not being able to be a good partner, because they just don't have the energy, they don't have the understanding. Maybe they are used to toxic dynamics, growing up in a toxic home, and so they're just, doing the same thing that they saw over and over again with their parents. There's a lot of different reasons, but mental health is going to be a major component of how well somebody can be present in a relationship and meet each other's needs.
Sometimes they have a difficult time meeting their own needs. So trying to take care of a partnership, trying to be there for your partner can be really hard when you struggle with, chronic depression and other mental health disorders and issues.
Yep. And we break it down into attachment styles to give you an understanding of things. When you have more of a basic understanding of how people attach, you can see that there are a lot of patterns that play out. When you become more aware of those patterns, you can break them. But awareness is key.
This is huge. And with attachment style, you could see relationships fade if it's two avoidants that get together. Sometimes you find that. It's not as common, but it does happen. Sometimes one of the avoidant partners becomes a little bit more anxious because they see the other is more avoidant than they are. So that can happen.
Yeah.
Or it can happen in a situation where somebody who's more anxious, they're neglected enough to the point where they don't care. So that's another pattern where we see relationships start to fade. And you might start to notice, man, I always felt like, I could depend on my partner, that they would always be there. I didn't think that they would ever break up with me. They're always in the background. And one day you notice that your anxious partner isn't really putting in the effort that was the last little thing that was sustaining the relationship. So that happens sometimes. So be aware of that pattern if you see it. Another thing that can happen is consistent conflict to the point where you start to have contempt for one another. Now, this is one of those four horsemen. This is one of those big C's that, really distance people. And this, even though the conflict can be really loud, this can also be a silent killer, because some of you do not deal with conflict well and will keep it inside and just build up a lot of resentment for your partner, which can cause the relationship to fade. Now you're no longer putting effort in the relationship because you're mad about something that they said months ago. So this is another pattern that we see that causes relationships to kind of fade out.
Absolutely.
Another big one is prioritizing other things over the relationship. While we know that this happens sometimes because there are emergencies in life, sometimes work needs to take priority because we have to eat, we need to pay our rent, we have things that we have to do. Not prioritizing your relationship at all, or constantly focusing on other things and not giving it the nourishment that it needs, is another huge reason why things fade out. And I've seen this pattern, I'll say particularly in men who work hard and really have that identity of being a provider, because sometimes you will be working hard for your family, for both of you or your future family, and don't realize that you are neglecting your partner in the present moment. So that can be a hard balance to deal with too.
Yep. We should have said at the start of the video that people should consider and write down the things that they did, the mistakes they made in these areas, and what their partner did, and compare and see how it may have led to the relationship fading, right? Another big one is intimacy. Now, intimacy is obviously emotional, but also physical. And sometimes people don't realize how the physical neglect can really kill a relationship. And, obviously it's not just the physical needs, but, the emotional component to it, where you feel like somebody cares about you and that you're genuinely there for them. That has to go along with it. I've seen men struggle with this, but I've seen women really struggle with this. I did an email coaching recently with a woman that could not understand how the physical component would make the guy want to leave the situation. Well, you're the only one that's supposed to be providing that need for that person. So if that is something that they need and you as their partner are not giving them that need when you're the one person that's supposed to give that to them, of course they're going to get angry and resentful and eventually want to leave the situation.
Right. And this can be a little sticky because there might be times where, there are some barriers to physical intimacy. Some of you are in long distance relationships. Some of you do have issues with intimacy that do show up and affect relationships. But I think the point here is being able to find that physical means of connection and being able to show affection and being able to come to an agreement there, to be able to have these conversations and talk about these things openly.
Yeah. Because you'll see some situations where one partner has relentlessly tried to express that need to their partner and they didn't neglect and they continue to neglect. And other situations where they don't express it and keep it to themselves, and so they just get more resentful and it builds up.
Right.
So relationships are not easy to navigate. There's so many different components of it.
And sometimes it can be a medical issue too. So I've heard
True.
of situations where it's a medical issue and their partner is frustrated that they are not getting help for themselves, for them to be able to enjoy the physical intimacy of the relationship too.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the emotional component for that. I did a coaching today with a woman today who's a bit older. And the guy she was seeing, I think, was maybe in his early 70s or mid-60s. And he had cancer. And so they gave him some kind of injection to slow down the testosterone. So I guess it would help with the cancer treatment. So he was not able to give her intimacy for a very long time. So she sacrificed that, and she was a really good partner for him all during his treatment. And wouldn't you know, as soon as the treatment was over, he said, I'm not ready for a relationship right now.
Wow.
And wanted to go off and be intimate with other people. She even found him on a dating site.
Wow.
And I really have tried to get her to see how much he's been neglecting her and not really invested in her. But she was so invested in him, nurturing him, neglecting her own needs, her, physical needs, to be with him.
Wow.
And she sacrificed all that, which made her more invested in the relationship, but it made it easy for him to walk away, sadly.
Yeah, and this is hard because it can be so nuanced. There's so many things that can affect your sex drive, your, desires. Even medication, mental health medication can be something that causes a barrier in that too. So it's something that's nuanced, but the main thing here is showing that affection, being able to show that you care about the other person's physical intimacy needs, and being able to talk about those things openly.
Yep. Okay, another big one is parenting your spouse.
Or your partner. And we see this
Partner, yeah.
quite a lot. And sometimes this can creep in and it can happen over time and you don't even realize it.
Yeah. I remember Margaret saying one time she said something and she heard her mother came out and she said, What was that? What happened there?
So it happens.
Yeah.
And this is something that can create a strange dynamic and can really hurt the attraction there and hurt, the passion of a relationship. It can become one where being with your partner, it kind of feels like being with your parent. You start thinking about, I have to do this chore and that chore, and if I don't do this perfectly, then I'm going to get some criticism here. So it can be a tough one, and it can cause a relationship to fade, because what happens eventually when you're with your bickering parents? You go to your room and you go play some video games or do something else, right?
Yeah.
So it can cause a lot of distancing between partners when that becomes the dynamic.
Absolutely. And growing apart, obviously, is a big part of why things fade. You have to want to do things together. You have to want to spend that time together. If you have different goals and purpose for your life and things that are important to you, and they have different things that are important to them, sure, you're going to have some differences, but you need to have enough to keep the connection strong.
To have some shared goals.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you find that your relationship is fading out, what do you do? This can
Run?
be something that's
Panic?
really challenging.
I don't know. What do you do?
You just vanish from thin air. So you don't want to panic. You want to be able to maintain emotional self-control and remember that it's normal for relationships to ebb and flow. So you might be in a bit of an ebb, and so panic can sometimes give you the opposite outcome than what you're wanting. So that's why we tell you to be able to maintain your calm and go back and remember what it is that connected you to begin with.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will find that the thing that connected you to your partner is the thing that annoys you about them later on down the line. But try to see, what it was that did attract you from the beginning, and try to either yourself be in that element where you were when you were first attracted, or get your partner to be in their element that they were when the two of you were first, sparking things up.
Makes sense. So what else can you do? Well, you can get mental health assistance, help, get a therapist, get a coach. Hey, I know a couple of good coaches.
Do you now?
At askgreg.net. Enlighten yourself, read books, do the creative healing course, do the workbooks. All those things are going to help give you a lot of different perspectives and grow, educate yourself, and put yourself in a much better position to keep a relationship strong. I mean, everything that we teach, in the course, in the workbooks, like, it's not some corny get your ex back guide. It's all stuff to work through your issues, to get healthy, to learn the skills to be a great partner, to change your negative behavior in real time and replace it with something positive. So when you are interacting with somebody and they pull away, you don't lose emotional self-control like Esteban.
Right. And also... Also, to process the breakup, it can be a lot to kind of take in and to move toward acceptance. So those tools definitely help. You can also start by doing things differently. Sometimes you get stuck in a pattern, and the way out of it is to be doing things that are outside of the norm, outside of the box. And this is much easier said than done. And it does take some research on your part. It does take creativity to be in that kind of headspace to say, okay, well, what else haven't we done? What else could we add new to this relationship? Or revisit that was really exciting for us.
Yeah, you have to consider those things. If you're not actively thinking about the connection and how to make it better, it will slowly fade away.
And a couple other things you can do is think about your stress load. A lot of times we don't really take a minute to say, how much stress am I under right now at this very moment? And what can I do to, first of all, manage this? And second of all, reduce my stress load. And so think about that for yourself, but also for your partner. Is there anything that you can do to help reduce your partner's stress load? And maybe that might mean doing the dishes. Maybe that might mean, I don't know, doing some kind of task that they have been stressing about that might take you just a couple minutes. So think about, how you can be there to help them out, but also think about the stress that you're under as well. And last, but definitely not least, and some might even argue the most important, is to remember to have fun. In order to keep things lively, you have to really be connected to your playfulness. We have several videos on the channel actually just dedicated to playfulness and its importance in a relationship. And this is not something that we're making up. This is something that's actually research-based, how important playfulness is in a relationship. So that's, one other part that can really keep the relationship alive, playfulness, laughter.
Yep. When you're struggling with your attachment issues, it's very difficult to be playful because you're afraid of losing someone. So you're not acting natural. You're not yourself. So that's a big reason why you want to get centered and heal those issues, because you're going to be naturally a lot more able to have fun in the present moment, because you're not always obsessing about them leaving me or, struggling with a mental health issue. That keeps you out of the playfulness, of the banter, of the fun, of the flirting. So if you don't work through that stuff, you're not going to be much fun to be around a lot of the time. You're stressed out, you're irritated, you're annoyed, you're depressed.
Or your jokes are just going to land flat.
I wouldn't know anything about that. That's not a problem I have. So, but a lot to consider. It's a very, very attractive trait to be able to play and have fun and banter.
Right. right? So it can be difficult when you start to see that relationship fade. Maybe you're in a situation where your ex did kind of fade away from you and you don't really understand the breakup. We're hoping that this video provided some sort of clarity for you. Like Craig had said, you can kind of go back and see if maybe some of your behaviors might have been in line with what we said, or your exes or your partners. So we're hoping to put some of this out there just to kind of get you to think.
All right. So hopefully this one's been helpful to you. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you could do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.